I was able to go visit Polyface Farm. Zach and I went and visited, and were welcomed with love. Got to see everything in action, and was blessed with a meal. And when people tell you that local food tastes different, to me, it's not about a difference of can I taste the difference between locally, sustainable beef and regular beef? Yes, you can. But the difference, what I experienced at your house, was the love and the care and the pure love for the animals and the person you were serving. And so I can't thank you enough for coming, and I appreciate you joining us. So please welcome Joel Salatin.
Well, I'd be remiss if I got very far into this and had to backtrack. They say behind every successful man is one amazed woman, and my amazed woman is here with me today, my bride of 34 years, Teresa. Sister-in-law of Loretta Sheets. So when I tell you stories about growing up, just you can remember that Loretta, my little sister, we have an older brother between us, and so Loretta and I spent many days playing, arguing, and doing all the things that little kids do on a farm. Let me set a stage for you, and it is really an honor to be here. I don't take this lightly, and I've been really thinking about, this is one shot at touching a worldwide organization, and so I'm going to take my one shot. I'll say some things that are very great, congratulatory, and I'll say some things that are very challenging. And I hope you'll take them all in the spirit that I mean, that I honor and appreciate a chance to have this podium for such a prestigious. I was not a scouter. My background was 4-H. And I grew up in 4-H. Our children grew up in 4-H. Daniel was state president before he got out, which is as high as you can go in 4-H. I just made it to cabinet. I didn't make president. So our background was in 4-H. But we do live literally 1 mile from one of the scout camps. The Shenandoah Boy Scout Camp is 1 mile away from us and has been there ever since we've been there. In fact, came a little bit before we arrived in 1961. I was just a little chumper then. So we've had a relationship with the scout camp. It's been the staging area over my growing up times of several times. We've had forest fires and up on the mountain, and it's a staging area for that, and we go over and help. We used to go over and help, and now, of course, with insurance, they can't let the community help fight fires. You have to have professionals, so we can't do that kind of work anymore. Context growing up, grew in a very conservative, faith-based family, and it was an odd thing because all of our Christian church faith friends were the straight-laced fundamental type Christians, and but on the farm we routinely entertained hippie dippy commie, pinko, socialist, beaded, bearded, braless, okay? And sometimes there was the strong scent of marijuana. But these guys were interested in the things that our family was interested in, which was compost and a non-pharmaceutical life, a wellness life, a life that wasn't dependent on doctors and hospitals, and a life that actually built soil, healed the land, and provided and extended redemptive care into the land. So I grew up in this tremendous tension between the creation worshipers and the creator worshipers. And of course the creator worshipers thought that the creation worshipers were a bunch of pagan hedonists who had no regard for accountability to any kind of divine being. And of course the creation worshipers looked at the creator worshipers as a bunch of manipulative, dominion-dominated rapists, and I know that's a strong word, but I see it all the time. I do, and so the tension of my life, being this, organic farmer, is always going to these speak to sustainable farm communities and things like that. And you walk in and you're supposed to embrace all of the agenda of the kind of, liberal environmental foodie agenda. And so for fun, I just kind of created a mantra, a moniker that I could use, which was Christian libertarian environmentalist capitalist lunatic farmer. And it stood me in good stead as I've gone into these different situations. So I've now, been able to be embraced by areas as different as Bob Jones University and Patrick Henry College, and all the way to UC Berkeley, Harvard, and Yale. So that's a pretty broad bridge. Everybody eats. You can live without a car. You can actually live without an iPhone 6. We could live without Hollywood. We could live without the lottery. We could live without a lot of things, which we can't live without food. And so when our family came to the farm, we're starting to look at these patterns. And my dad was quite a genius. We said he was organic before Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring. And here are just some of the things that we began noticing when we looked at patterns in nature. One is animals move. People ask me, how'd you get so clever and invent all, eggmobiles and millennium feather nets and, all these things that you do? And it's very simple. Animals move. We live in a culture that doesn't believe animals should move. Something as basic as that. But as soon as you say animals move, then suddenly you're dealing with, we've got to control them because the neighbors don't want them on their place. And then you have to get them water. You mean even while they're moving? Yeah, while they're moving. So you have to have portable water. We have to protect them in shelter, rain, sun, whatever. You got to give them shade. So now we have to have portable shade. And so the function of the design derives from the basic template of nature, which is animals move. It really is that simple. And so it gives you pause to say, okay, if that's such a critical element in nature, does it not behoove us to patronize food systems that recognize that animals move? Not food systems that are dedicated to cramming, 11 chickens in a 16-inch by 22-inch cubicle, cutting off their beef, cutting off their feet, administering subtherapeutic pharmaceuticals for them, and enmeshing them in a fecal particulate air all the time to create lesions in their respiratory tracts so they can get, direct fecal E. coli into their egg tract. So, animals move. Number two, how does soil build? Perennials, not annuals. So a farm and food policy should, look at nature. Perennials are far more prevalent than annuals. If you look at the U.S. farm policy, we only support 6 things. They're all annuals. Nothing about perennials. So our entire cultural food farm policy is predicated on a soil-destructive notion that we should be growing annuals instead of perennials. And I don't have time to go into what the difference is. If you don't know what the difference is, Google it and you'll find it. Next principle is, when you look at nature and patterns in nature, you see diversity. You see diversity and symbiosis. And that's what you see. You don't see monospeciation, single speciation. You see a patchwork. Now, I see that there's a new buzzword in the kind of sustainable farming movement. They're calling it maize farming, not corn maize farming, but mosaic farming. Mosaic farming, making a landscape looks like a mosaic, and that's not a bad thing. Next principle when you look at nature is hydration. Nature does a lot of things to hydrate the landscape. I was down in New Mexico last year, and I asked some people who were smarter about it than I said, so were there beavers here? They said, beavers? Yeah, this place was covered up with beavers. We had lakes and ponds and beaver dams all over New Mexico 500 years ago. If you can imagine the North American continent with the number of beaver ponds that had to have been on the landscape, it's just amazing. And so we're big on building ponds. We don't have the beavers anymore, but what we do have is excavation capacity, and now we can build ponds even more strategically better than beavers. Another one is animals as co-laborers. Another pattern we see in nature is animals as healers. What's the reason for animals in nature? Well, one is that they are a way to move biomass around. I mean, if we didn't have animals, solar energy hits photosynthetic activity on top of a hill. It grows, it dies, and all the minerals and derivations from that biomass, that new stored solar energy that's basically, mystical sunbeams turned to fungible mass that feeds earthworms and soil microorganisms, all that material gravitates downhill into the fertile valleys. Well, the role of animals in nature is to eat in the fertile valleys, go up and sit on a ridgetop to protect themselves from predators, and poop and pee while they're up there, and restart that mineral cycle that moves downhill, and then they eat down here, it goes back up here. So the predator-prey relationship is this beautiful choreography of fertility management to create a whosoever will growing environment for plants. Isn't that marvelous? It's not just haphazard or happenstance. Another thing that animals do is sanitation. The egret on the rhino's nose is not there, for anything except to sanitize the Cape buffalo, the rhino, or the Cape buffalo, as the case may be. They're eating bugs and things like that. So on our farm, for example, we follow the cows with egg mobiles, and the chickens, the birds, follow the herbivores. Amazingly, we now know that herbivore manure contains 7 essential digestive enzymes for birds. Wow, isn't that amazing? Fearfully and wonderfully made. Folks, this is so far beyond anything we can even imagine. And we see nature being built up with carbon. A pattern in nature is there's no anhydrous ammonia tank running around in nature. How does nature build soil? It builds it with carbon-centric decomposition. Carbon-centric decomposition. And so how do we do that? Well, we do large-scale composting on our farm, and we turn the compost with pigs, not with big petroleum compost turners, but with pigs. All pigs have a sign on their forehead, "Will work for corn." We put the corn in. The pigs then seek the corn, and in doing so, aerate. We call them pig aerators, like aerobic dance, all right? Pig aerators as they churn up this compost and aerate it. So animals do the work, which means now that the animals are not just tenderloin. The chickens are not just egg layers. They are now co-laborers in this land healing ministry. And it completely changes the spiritual and emotional relationship that we have with them. Another template that we see in nature is a fundamentally expensive food and the cost of life. The U.S. has a cheap food policy. Many organizations have a cheap food policy, and we hear, about being unable to afford high-quality, integrity food. But a cheap food policy creates a cheap farm policy. A cheap farm policy creates a cheap farmer policy. And a cheap farmer policy creates improper stewardship on the landscape. That's why I'm a big believer in the Jeffersonian intellectual agrarian. I think we get what we pay for, and I don't have time in this talk here to go into all the externalized costs and the pollution of 700 riparian dead zones, but I find it almost scandalous that we would have a program to go get in touch with frogs and salamanders while we're patronizing a system that actually creates a dead zone the size of New Jersey and the Gulf of Mexico and encourages, through pesticides and herbicides, 3-legged frogs, infernal salamanders, and 700 riparian dead zones. That's called schizophrenic reasoning. And so I would call us to a new congruency of talk and walk. And that's the hardest thing in the world to do. It's easy to sit around and talk and great platitudes of sustainability and what we're going to do. What I want to see is what we're actually doing. And the fact is that when we participate in a cheap food policy, food having to be living and then die that we may live, and where we are able to participate in this most fundamental aspect of life, in which if something must live, something else must die. I mean, that's a powerful spiritual and profound ecological truth. People that want to, become vegans and vegetarians so they don't kill anything don't understand that plants communicate in pheromones. A carrot you bite into is just as dead as a chicken that you slit their throat of. It doesn't matter. In order to have life, you must first have death. Everything is eating and being eaten, and if you don't believe it, go lie naked in your flower bed for 3 days and see what gets eaten. This is the beginning of a true understanding of sanctity of life, when we understand that life requires something to die. And that is a fundamental, so it's a cost of life thing. And another template, pattern that we see is that nature is fundamentally integrated. It's not segregated. What you see is a tremendous amount of intricate, complex relational integration. And so, it is an honor. Here's the deal. You know what? It's all God's stuff. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. All right? It's not mine. It's not yours. It's not Monsanto's. It's not the Boy Scouts of America. It's God's stuff. All right? And so as we approach God's stuff, whether it's energy, food, earthworms, cows, whatever, as we approach God's stuff, I would suggest that our role is one of incredible honor and privilege to suss out these wonderful choreographed patterns in nature and come along as God's representative hands and feet, as ambassadors and as stewards of His stuff. That's not only a tremendous responsibility, it's an incredible privilege. Why couldn't He do all this with angels? Why couldn't He could do all this? He spoke it into being, okay? I mean, it's not that difficult. But He wants us to establish a record for Him and for discipleship of how we view and take care of His investment, of His stuff. He's put us here as His caretakers, His hands, His feet, with the privilege of being able to participate. The challenge is that it's easy to drop into segregated thinking. We can owe a lot of this to St. Augustine, who came up with the notion that, spiritual is good and physical is bad. And so we must sit and just talk about spiritual things. Everything physical that we can see is bad. And so, we've got this idea that we can segregate our thinking. And it concerns me. It actually, this will be my hardest challenge here for the day. It concerns me that we have this mentality. We heard it this morning in the wonderful young people who spoke, if I may say the unspeakable here, that we have to go away to commune with nature. We have to go away to be an environmentalist. Folks, we are nature. It's here in this room with us. God says, I am ever present with you. We don't have to go. What did He say? He said, you don't have to go to a place to worship. I'm here. Folks, we don't have to go to a place to show environmental care. The challenge for us is to show our environmental care where we live. It's easy to be a missionary and go tell those people how to live. It's hard to build a reputation of excellence and stewardship with God's investment right where we live. You don't have to get on a jet and go somewhere away to commune with nature. And number two, it has spawned an idea of what I call abandonment environmentalism. Now listen, I get the guilt, okay? Anyone who actually takes environmentalism seriously and earth stewardship seriously, anybody who does and reads history, we all have this burden on our back. I get it, all right? And we're walking along with this guilt burden on our back because the study of history generally is a study of pillaging, of conquistador mentality on the earth. And I get that. But what is our response to how we have misused and abused our big brain and opposing thumbs? What is our response to that? I would say that our response should not be abandonment and, we can't touch it. We can't touch the earth. The earth is too precious to be desecrated by the breath of human existence. I would suggest, just like troubled marriages don't need abandonment, you don't need, we'll go off in our own corners and not talk anymore. Is that the way to solve? No. The way to solve is engagement. And so I would suggest, I would present another environmental ethic, and that is the environmental ethic of participation, so that we have not environmentalism by abandonment, that the only way we can preserve the environment is to make more state parks and wilderness areas and unmolested areas, but no, rather it is to participate. I would suggest that God wants us to use our big brain and the mechanical ability and creative ability of our opposing thumbs and actually engage with his investment and give him a return on the investment. Let's make it not beautiful there. Let's make it beautiful here. Does that make sense? But it's so much easier to just go and say, it's hard to make it beautiful here. Participatory environmentalism is all about bringing a redemption mentality to where we live and what we do and how we live. I can just, and you know what? I'm not consistent. You're not consistent. I just let you know on that. But there is one thing I'm pretty consistent on that I've done. I fly a lot, travel a lot. I haven't taken a drink on an airplane for years, and it's hundreds of flights. Why? Because I can't abide a one-use plastic cup. Why can't they use paper cups? Why can't they use compostable cups? That's just one little thing. So I was coming back from Australia a couple of years ago, and that's a long flight. I said, well, I guess I better get a drink here. It's 14 hours, I'm going to get dehydrated if I don't take a drink. So I took the first one. I stuck it in my little thing. Of course, the steward, the flight attendant comes along, and they're picking all the trash up, right? Putting it in a little baggie. She came to me. She went to pick. I said, no, just leave it. I'll use it again. She said, okay. So they come down the aisle in another couple hours. Water. They've got the little water, and I take my cup out of the thing. Hold it up. She pours water in it. I drink it. Stick it back in my thing. 5 minutes later, here they come back down now. You know what I'm talking about, right? And they're picking up all of it. I said, no. She went to. I said, no, just leave it. I'll use it again. It took about 4 times, on this whatever incredibly long flight. And the last time she came by, she stopped and she said, if everybody did that, we'd have a lot less trash on this plane. It's so easy to get excited about big projects and the world and the planet. But I'm with Wendell Berry. Ultimately, the hardest part is the little stuff. The little decision that I can make, because the big stuff is a composite manifestation of billions of little decisions that we make. And the world that our children will inherit will be a composite representation of all the decisions that we make. It really is that simple. The Chinese have a saying, if everyone would sweep at their own doorstep, the whole world would be clean. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. So, it really boils down to real-time daily decisions. And our beliefs actually guide what we do. All right, so let's go through a couple of these beliefs that I adhere to. Number one, life is biological, not mechanical. Life is fundamentally biological, it's not mechanical. We live in this is why I've taken the mantra of lunatic, because we have an orthodoxy in our culture. Every society has had an orthodoxy, remember? Can you imagine being the first guy to say, the earth is not flat? What? Weirdo. The first guy to say, slavery is not a good thing. the first guy to say women ought to be able to vote. I mean, what? Really? I mean, you know, and we now and so every culture has its orthodoxy. Okay, we now have an orthodoxy as well as our culture, and that is that food and farm and animals and plants are fundamentally mechanical, not biological. That's the only way that you can justify genetically modified organisms. It's the only way that you can justify feeding dead cows to cows. I mean, for 30 years, the U.S. took us to to free steak dinners to teach us this new scientific way of feeding cows, where we take dead cows and we grind them up and we feed them to cows. And we didn't buy into it. Everybody said, "Oh, this is cool. Grow them fatter, faster, bigger, cheaper." I mean, that's great. I mean, we know that that's not a good proposal because the average NFL football player is dead at 57. When your neck is bigger than your head, you're a freak, and nature weeds you out. So, fatter, faster, bigger, cheaper is not the most sacred goal. And so here we didn't do it, and for 30 years we're branded as Luddites, Neanderthals, barbarians. What do you want to do? Bring back the washboard, throw out the washing machine, a bunch of old fuddy-duddies. Well, here we got suddenly after 30 years there was this big collective worldwide, oops, maybe we shouldn't ought to done that, with bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Nature always bats last. Truth always finally wins out. And what we've got now is a new language. Anybody in here over 50, I guarantee you when you grew up, you didn't even know anybody with a food allergy. Gluten intolerance we never even heard of. Who heard Salmonella, Campylobacter, Listeria, E. coli? Folks, this is a lexicon of a raped, pillaged, conquistadored nature screaming to us on her knees saying, "Please, enough!" And can the Boy Scouts of America become the first international, worldwide, largest organization to say, "We hear"? We believe that we can heal, that life is distinctive, it's sacred, and we do ask, does it matter if the pig can express his pigness? Right now, you may not know that since January 1, 2013, 1 in 4 pigs birthed in America is dying. 1 in 4. Now, for almost 2 years, the industry is reeling from it. It's captivating the minds and interests of everybody in the industry. We're not having a problem with our pigs. They're outside. They're running around. They're fully expressing their pigness. But the industry is having a big problem. 1 in 4 is dying, and it's called epidemic porcine viral diarrhea. Now, I don't know about you, but I've already decided that if there's anything worse than diarrhea, it's got to be viral diarrhea. I mean, that would be like the worst. But you know what? I don't know a single researcher in the country who has dared to ask, should we be putting 5,000 pigs in one house? You can't ask the question. I mean, that's like a Baptist asking, should we sprinkle this Sunday? I mean, all right. That takes a little while. But this is the orthodoxy, you see. Okay, next big principle, next big belief. You know what? It's all God's, not ours. Everything has a moral dimension. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, "Whethersoever therefore you eat or drink or whatsoever you do 50% to the glory of God." Now, what does it say? Do all. And if I'd been Paul writing that, I would have certainly elevated the discussion to some spiritual dimension and not used eat and drink. My goodness, I mean, I would have used it how you catechize the shorter doctrinal faith. I would have made some sort of a great theological statement there, that matters. No, it's eating and drinking. That means A, I can't get out of it because I can't live otherwise. And B, God is interested in the most fundamental, seemingly minor parts of life. He knows the hairs of our heads are covered. He knows when the sparrow falls. He says that the lily of the field is adorned more beautiful than Solomon in all his glory. He knows these things. He sends the ravens to take care of Elijah. Crows. But he knew where the crows were. He even knows where the buzzards are. It's amazing. Everything has a moral dimension. Next, I'm responsible. I'm responsible. God cares not just what I think and say, but what I do. And the decisions that I make have visceral consequences. Again, we like to separate the spiritual and the physical and say, we go and we do our spiritual deeds over here, but they don't really impact, our decisions Monday through Friday over here or Monday through Saturday. And God is not a segregationist. He's an integrationist. And he wants those to be lined up. And you know what? Next belief, all we do is supposed to be to the glory of God. That glory is kind of a spiritual word, we hear it bandied about. We don't use it in everyday language much. You just don't use the glory much. But God does. That's what's interesting. We've kind of relegated the word glory to Christmas. Glory to God in the highest, on earth, peace, goodwill to men. We have it in the catechism. The end of man is to glorify God and live with him forever. We have this word in our spiritual lexicon, but we don't use it in our day-to-day lexicon. But God does. He says, listen to this. He says, the glory of old men is their gray head. Mine's about gone. It's just, there's a little bit of gray there. Some turns gray and some turns loose. But anyway, the glory of old men is their gray head. You know what the glory of young men is according to God? The glory of young men is their strength, right? And he talks about the glory of things terrestrial and the glory of things celestial. God doesn't segregate his vocabulary. He uses glory for a lot of things. Well, what does it mean to the glory of God, or the glory of an old man, his gray hair, or the glory of a young man, his strength, those kinds of things. What is that? That's an awfully visceral, physical type conversation of the word glory. What does it mean? Well, what it means is that the distinctives of that individual. Glory is when you recognize, respect, and honor the uniqueness and distinctives of that being, that individual, that thing. What is it? The glory of a chair is that you can sit in it and be comfortable, The glory of an old man is his gray hair. It means what's distinctive about an old man is his wisdom and experience. Okay, that's the idea. And so it's the distinctives. So the glory of God is God's distinctives. Here's the deal. If all of creation is an object lesson of spiritual truth, I would suggest that it's very difficult for our children to understand the concept of glory to God if they haven't grown up with the concept of glory to the pig. And I'm not being sacrilegious here. See, I think that it's how we appreciate and honor the uniqueness and distinctive character as we reverence and make sacred the distinctiveness of the least of these that becomes the object lesson of how we respect and honor the greatest of these. And so a society and a culture that fails to recognize that there's an importance in respecting the pigness of the pig will never understand the more lofty spiritual concept of the glory of God. And so how we actually, our understanding of the godness of God, if you will, the godness of God, grows foundationally out of our understanding of the pigness of the pig and the tomato-ness of the tomato. So what does that say? When all the research for 40 years in tomatoes is not about how to grow a more tasty tomato or a more nutritious tomato. It's all about how to breed and create a tomato cultivar that can stand 3,000 miles rattling in the back of a truck from California to New Hampshire that tastes like cardboard, has the nutrition of cardboard, and nobody wants to eat it. What does that say about our view toward the glory of the tomato if we make something that God wanted to be beautiful, nutritious, and tasty, and if our only goal is shippability and shelf life, and we take all the nutrition and the taste out of it? This is not a beautiful thing, you see. We have adulterated the tomato-ness of the tomato and turned it into a generic, homogeneous sheet of cardboard. We have desecrated the beautiful sacredness of creation. See, we think that it is how a being, whether that's a carrot, a tomato, a chicken, or a turkey, or a cow, we believe that the sacredness of the life being given for us, whether it's crunching into the tomato or sinking your fork into a T-bone steak, that the act of where something has to die to give us life is created sacred by the sacredness we imbue the being with in life. And when that being is just viewed as inanimate protoplasmic structure to be manipulated, however cleverly hubris can imagine to manipulate it, we cheapen life, we cheapen death, and we actually make what should be a sacred sacrificial act of pointing to the necessity of death for life to occur. We take that and we cheapen it and desecrate it. And when we commune together, when we come to the table to dine, and we eat dead things, and we kill things to feed our internal beings, that sacrifice is sanctified the way we have honored and respected the life in life. I've got about 5 minutes. Let me run through just a brainstorm list, just for fun, of what the BSA, if I were asked the question, what can the BSA do? I sure appreciated the slide this morning. What can we do? What can you do? All right? So let's just run through a few of these just for fun. One would be for the Boy Scouts to eliminate all high fructose corn syrup in all their activities and meetings and camps. That's kind of hard when a big donor is Coca-Cola. Whoa. See, that's what they bring me in for. They bring me in to speak the unspeakable. But I wanted to just lead with that just to show when we talk and walk, don't we? I mean, high fructose corn syrup, folks, do I have to convince anybody here? That is not a good thing. Why can't our camp serve carbonated apple juice, carbonated grape juice? I mean, Hot Lips Pizza in Portland, Oregon. You go there, you go in, they don't have soda. I mean, you go in there and you get carbonated fruit juice. It's cheap and it's food and it's delicious. I mean, you can just eat it, drink it. It's fantastic. Okay, but high fructose corn syrup represents all sorts. It represents an assault on our body. I mean, we're not supposed to eat this stuff. I mean, we're not supposed to eat anything that you can't make in your kitchen. If you need a laboratory to make it and then eat it, you got problems. Okay, food is supposed to be a whosoever will deal. All right? And whosoever willed food is food that doesn't take a whole lot of special apparatus to prepare it. A little bit of fire, a little bit of skillet, a little bit of, culinary stirring and slicing and dicing. Boom, I agree with Michael Pollan. We probably shouldn't be eating anything that wasn't available before 1900. And we can all be thankful that hot dogs were introduced at the 1890 World's Fair. Just slipped right in there on the bottom. But this shows, doesn't it? When you just say eliminate high fructose corn syrup, it just shows the thing, the whole, the relevance of this. How about number 2? Buy local. You know, we live 1 mile from a scout camp there in the Shenandoah Valley, sourced from local farmers. I mean, we service 50 restaurants, 5,000 families, retail facades in the area, but to my knowledge, the Shenandoah Boy Scout Camp, and I say this with utmost respect, there's no animosity here, but nobody from there has ever called up and asked, you know, could we use your hot dogs instead of the ones that come on a Cisco truck? Nobody's ever asked, you know, could we serve your chickens instead of the ones from Tyson? And so a local sourcing concept, would be great, because here's the thing. So these kids are coming all out of the city. They're coming out to the city. They're coming for this wonderful environmental scouting, camping experience. It's fabulous. But can you see the incongruity of feeding them then food that is not connected to their place, that actually the externalized results of it actually hurt the kind of places they'd like to camp in? Are you with me? All right. Number 3, buy with integrity. Buy with integrity, that just means what it says. Just you know, the problem is that this sometimes gets in the way of sponsors. That's the problem with it. You know, Chipotle has this campaign, you know, food with integrity, and they got rid of RBGH in their milk. Now they're trying to get rid of GMOs in their vegetables and their other things. It's a good thing. Buy with integrity. Next, number 4. How about installing a biogas digester at every camp? A biogas digester for the toilet areas, and then the methane off of that goes directly into the kitchen. Every human generates enough methane per day in their excrement to cook all of their food. So now we have a biogas digester with the gas going right into the kitchens, and we're cooking on gas anyway, and we just, I don't mean anything more than that. We're cooking with gas. All right. Next, okay, how about cisterns? Cisterns under every roof. We catch all the roof runoff, and we have enough cisterns to catch every runoff from all the roof, so we become cisterns. No, cisterns. No, cisterns. Like water, you know, water holding potable water. Cisterns under every roof. Yeah, now that would be good. No, cisterns, like water, you know, like rain barrels, except great big rain barrels, like, you know, 500,000 gallons. Okay. All right, here's the next one. Chickens at every dining service place, so that instead, so all the food scraps come right out and go right into a flock of chickens. Normally at most camps, that would only take maybe 100 chickens. That's not many. I mean, those could be housed in a little structure, 20 by 30 feet. It's not big, all right? And then we've got chickens. The kitchen scraps all go right in the kitchens. The kitchens lay eggs for dining services. We've closed that loop. Now we don't have to get eggs from outside. And the campers can actually see the chickens. They can see this circle, and suddenly this circle of life becomes not some just environmental focus group discussion thing, but it's actually real. It's right here. It's where I live. How about no vending machines with plastic wrappers? Ooh. That'd be a big one. Camp gardens as object lessons of the importance of food. The beauty of the camping program. I do a lot of speaking at colleges, and the problem is that there's the big pushback on colleges of local and gardens and stuff is that they meet, especially in the northern areas, they meet at an anti-seasonal time. The beauty of the Scout program is you're actually meeting at camps when the food's available. There couldn't be a better, So I tell colleges, the first college that changes their academic year to go spring, summer, fall and take the winter off will be the first one that can seriously become green. Everything else is just talk. How about biomass-driven energy? Heard that mentioned this morning. What a great idea. I mean, a lot of these camps have a lot of forest on them. I know the one near us does. Doing good silviculture and integration. I mean, the fact is, responsible timber harvesting is part of our big brain and opposing thumbs, activity. It is not responsible to just take a hands-off policy to the forest and say we shall never cut a tree and let all the diseased, dead, dying trees just rot, fall over, and become fire hazards. No, why couldn't we take an active forestry role in our camps, turn that biomass, run a steam generator to be off the grid for the whole camp, pull the whole camp off grid, generate your own power, your own heat, and this works. Mow with animals. We don't need bat wing big mowers and stuff to mow the fields and things. We can mow them with a milk cow. I mean, in Tamaulipas, Mexico, you go down there, they got a big city park. There's 6 guys with dairy cows. They stake them through the park every day, and they come out and milk them in the evening, and they just mow around the park with the cows, okay? Or you can use sheep. If you don't want big cow pats to deal with, you can do it with sheep. They're little pebbles, it makes it a little better. But the point is to mow with animals. We now have the technology with portable containment systems and electrified netting and things to be able to mow around. How about scratch cooking with simple culinary work where we actually make stuff in-house from raw materials? These are all just ideas, okay? All ideas to get us going. But at the end of the day, what I would just leave you with is that all of this is about us coming in as co-laborers with God, as team players, and bringing His investment strategy and assuring His return on investment and proving that we really do care what happens to His stuff, whether it's animal, plant, energy, mineral, whatever it is, that we really do care what happens to His stuff. And let that synchronicity pierce us through, that we may indeed stand one day before our children and say, we did our best, not perfectly, but did our best to try to align our walk and our talk, that we may ultimately show you that there is no segregation of spiritual and physical, that it's all one, and we are part of this tremendous, awesome object lesson of spiritual truth. Thank you very much for letting me visit with you. Blessings on you.